Major Meat? General Salami, really? But General Salami went on record saying that Washington faces a choice between what he called an impossible military operation or accepting a bad deal. Basically telling the US there's no good way out of this situation at all, while he's basically holding zero cards. Senior Iranian officials threatened, and I'm quoting here, long and painful strikes on US positions if hostilities reignite. Iran's foreign minister Arakchi stated publicly that the United States is behaving with contradictory behavior and provocative statements. Kind of like the kettle calling the pot black, just a little bit there, Arakchi. But he warned that American pressure would only harden Tehran's resolve, but they haven't seen these images of the Warthog yet spinning up its 30mm gun. The IRGC's official channels pushed messaging that the ceasefire is fragile and that Iran's military stands, quote, fully prepared for any scenario, except they have no air force, no navy, no real surface-to-air missiles. But besides that, yeah, they're fully prepared. They're good to go. And then, almost like they needed a reminder of who they're talking to, Iran's Supreme National Security Council issued a statement calling resumed war likely if the U.S. refuses to soften its negotiating position. They doubled down on demands for control of the Strait of Hormuz, and they flat out rejected the American precondition of full nuclear dismantlement of their nuclear programs. Non-negotiable and impossible is what Iran said about dismantling their nuclear programs. Basically, the whole reason why the US is there, the IRGC is saying non-negotiable and impossible. Meanwhile, reports are coming out that they're killing thousands more of their people. Again, basically anybody that blinks wrong in Iran, because the regime is so paranoid, is getting the axe or the noose at this point. President Trump heard all of what the IRGC has been saying, it seems like, and he responded in a way that only he can. He told reporters flat out, frankly, maybe we're better off not making a deal at all. Do you want to know the truth? Because we can't let this thing go on. He then referenced the naval blockade directly, saying Iran has not paid a sufficient price yet for its behavior and outlined two options on the table: an acceptable deal or escalated military action. And on those same lines, in a Truth Social post, this is exactly what President Trump said regarding Iran. He said, "I will be soon reviewing the plan that has just been sent to us, but can't imagine that it would be acceptable and that they have not paid a big enough price for what they have done to humanity and the world over the last 47 years. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump." So let's lay out exactly what's happened over the last 24 hours, because there's been a lot of moving pieces here, and I want to make sure we all have the full picture. First, the IRGC and regime leadership, who's ever actually in charge, which likely there's multiple factions basically arguing and fighting each other, and that would be the Ayatollah class, the Mullahs, the IRGC that has the hard-line General Salami, I think is his name at this point. One of the leaders of the IRGC is basically trying to consolidate power, or multiple of them are fighting with factions that want control. And obviously the IRGC members that are near the Strait of Hormuz, or that's their area of responsibility, they probably feel like they have the biggest say in these negotiations and in what happens to Iran, because they feel like they have the actual power. That's what they feel like, but the A-10 Warthog has a little something to say about that. Trying to decide who's in power, that's what's going on in Iran's leadership right now. In my opinion, it looks a lot more at this point like taking down a mafia boss or an organized crime organization that's using proxy tactics than it does on any military front, because the military has been completely decimated in Iran. So that's been taken care of. So now the focus has become dismantling this organized crime organization, trying to bring them to the table, but ultimately there's probably things going on behind the scenes to help dismantle and crack and fracture the leadership itself. But they're still going to posture extremely hard around the Strait of Hormuz. That's their focus, because that's where the IRGC feels like they can actually pressure the world to stop. And they've got Europe on their side. Obviously, we know that Europe is getting kickbacks from a lot of the oil that is sold, the oil arbitrage and the Brent crude futures. So London's basically scooping off a couple euros per barrel, and they're putting that in their pockets, which amounts to billions, if not trillions, over the course of the last few decades. That's the amount of money that Europe makes by just keeping the oil flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. It's a pretty good deal that they made, right? We might see that shift here soon, but I think that tells us everything we need to know about why Europe hasn't wanted to get involved involved in this at all. But the IRGC, if this kicks back off, will likely be running drone swarms and fast attack boats, since that's pretty much all they have left, through the Strait of Hormuz. They've previously tried to demand those tolls on shipping that's passing through, and now their officials are publicly warning that resumed war is likely, they're basically just saying likely, like it's going to kick off here any day, and that American strikes would trigger painful retaliation against U.S. positions across the region. General Salami, or Salami, as we like to call him here, specifically warned that Iran's forces are, quote, ready to open the gates of hell on any invading force, language that was broadcast across Iranian state media within the last 24 hours. That is their playbook. Tap along the world as long as possible, try to get the deal they want, while behind the scenes, they can develop their ballistic missiles, nuclear weapons, so then they think at some point the negotiation would fall in their favor because they'd have that nuclear weapon in their playbook. They threaten loud, they posture hard, they cancel meetings, and then they hope the other side blinks and offers some concessions or meets them in the concession of not having to give up any of their nuclear program. Probably a snowball chance in hell of the US administration actually agreeing to that. The problem for the mullahs at this point is that the other side right now is the United States military under a president who has zero interest in blinking, instead just operating A-10s, F-16s, F-22s, F-35s on your doorstep. And I think the writing's on the wall. But this shows how hardline the regime is, that they can't really see what reality is right now. And President Trump was asked about Iran's latest peace proposal delivered through mediators in Pakistan, like we heard in that Truth Social post. Sounds like he wasn't impressed. Basically says the US has already achieved major objectives against the military arm of Iran, which is true. And he acknowledged that he would prefer not to escalate, but made it crystal clear that a weak deal is worse than no deal. And then he referenced the effectiveness of the ongoing naval blockade that's blockading Iranian ports, basically trying to get Iran to do something, causing fractures within the regime itself. And then CENTCOM continues to drop this imagery that is not so subtle of a flex. This is actually the guy who's doing squats and curls at the gym at the same exact time. It's the A-10 Warthog. They dropped that just a few hours ago. Warthogs on the ramp, they're in theater, they're ready to go. This is not a coincidence. When Iran drops this hardline rhetoric, all CENTCOM needs to do is say, oh, that's cool, and then boom, here's the A-10 Warthog. That's a not so subtle you-know-what measuring contest that the US military is winning every single time, not having to have rhetoric, just dropping pictures of the most capable drone-killing and fast attack boat spraying aircraft that exists on the entire planet. So Iran has claimed that they'll open the gates of hell against the United States, but it seems to me with the A-10 right there pointed at your front doorstep, you're kind of describing your own front door when you mention the gates of hell. But what this A-10 can physically do to drone swarms, fast attack craft, even being loaded out with laser-guided rockets, it's going to help us all understand why the megaphone was the worst investment for the mullahs going up against the A-10. Oh, and I think it's saying that since Iran is now refreshing their statement of long and painful strikes on US positions, that's actually the exact same rhetoric that they used before Operation Epic Fury kicked off. So the mullahs are threatening the US, basically showing us this is the last cards they have on the table, basically using threats to try to get America to back down. And that didn't exactly go well the last time they tried that tactic. So it's interesting because it's like Iran has this thunderous rhetoric. Meanwhile, the US keeps adding to the lightning inventory, the A-10, also known as the Lightning, and never once has to check with the weatherman. See what I did there? Up next, let's get inside the A-10 aircraft itself, because this aircraft is one of the most devastatingly effective weapons in the American arsenal for exactly this kind of fight. And what it does to IRGC hardware and confined water is something that Tehran absolutely shudders at when they think about how this thing could shred their fast attack boats. And speaking of weather, when it comes to the A-10 and the amount of lightning and rain that that thing can bring down, so it's kind of like Iran is getting a weather report about that lightning getting ready to rain down on their entire country, and no one in the IRGC owns an umbrella. But the A-10 Thunderbolt 2, I want you to understand why CENTCOM is releasing imagery, very specific aircraft imagery at this point. It's a deliberate message. The A-10, nicknamed the Warthog, was designed from the ground up under one mission: killing armor and surviving in a low-altitude, high-threat environment, all while its legendary reputation was built over tank fields in Europe, desert warfare in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's arguably even better suited for the Strait of Hormuz fight than almost any other platform in the American inventory right now. And here's why. A-10 is built around a GAU-8 Avenger, a hydraulically driven 7-barrel rotary cannon that fires 30mm depleted uranium rounds at 3,900 rounds per minute. I want you to really visualize that for a second. An IRGC fast boat is typically between 10 and 40 meters long, lightly built for speed and completely unarmored. A single 1-second burst from a GAU-8 puts roughly 65 rounds downrange in a dispersed pattern, and this is where no fast attack boat, none, can survive that engagement. But this is what makes the Warthog uniquely dangerous in this specific environment. Its ability to loiter and be up ahead for hours at a time. The A-10 can stay over a target for extended periods, be it low altitude or high altitude, and it can definitely strike those mine-laying vessels in real time, and that's the worst nightmare of those mine-laying vessels, likely one of the reasons why we're seeing fresh images of this beast roll out. And then the APKWS rocket system, Advanced Precision Kill System, those are laser-guided 2.7-inch rockets that are absolutely lethal against small surface vessels and lightly armored targets. It also carries the AGM-65 Maverick missile that delivers a standoff punch against hardened or larger targets, and the aircraft is cleared to carry a wide range of general purpose and precision guided bombs. It's basically the multi-tool. It's the Leatherman of fighter jets. It's also got a titanium bathtub that surrounds the pilot and critical flight systems, which is why we saw this thing survive after taking multiple shots, small arms, potentially even RPG shots, while it was going in to help rescue that downed weapons systems officer in Iran. This thing was there providing close air support in the weeds, getting shot at, and it still made it home. Self-healing wings is also a part of the A-10. This thing is just a total flying tank. That brings us to the 4D chess strategic analysis section, because when you step back and look at everything happening today as a complete picture, you're not looking at some random event. You're looking at a deliberate, layered American strategic posture operating on multiple levels simultaneously, and this is working. We've got financial pressure, we've got a blockade, and then the threat of renewed American air power being stuffed down the throats of the mullahs. Iran is playing loud right now. All they have are threats. That's all they can technically do as they try to bring Europe onto their side. European nations are economically getting hit, obviously, but Iran is trying to look like the victim so that they can try to create some sort of a coalition and try to pressure the United States. And the mullahs are betting that sustained economic pain on Europe eventually translates into enough diplomatic pressure on the US to force a compromise. Remember, England has the ability to shave money off the barrels of oil that are going through the Strait of Hormuz. So they have a hidden agenda of trying to make sure the strait stays open regardless of what compromise is made with Iran. Potentially, even if that means Iran having a nuclear weapon. I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of like London is saying, yeah, we don't really care about the regime in Iran that's a radical regime having a nuclear weapon, as long as we get the arbitrage from the oil going through the Strait of Hormuz and we get those kickbacks, which are not small. We're talking billions of dollars, but that is a very short-sighted mindset that Iran is hoping that Europe pressures the United States into. So there you go. Here's where we've landed today. Iran's mullahs threatening the US military on a whole new level, calling war likely. They promise long, painful strikes. Iran's general threatened to open the gates of hell, and within hours, CENTCOM answered with fresh pics of the Warthog sitting on the ramp ready to go. Naval blockade in full force. What do you think happens next? Do you think the ceasefire will hold? Do you think we'll see new hostilities kick off involving the Warthog in the next week? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Would love to hear what you have to say. And then go ahead and follow me on X, follow me on Instagram. I'm posting there pretty much every day. And then go ahead and join the Max Ready Room. That's the members only section. You get access to fresh members only content.